Welcome to the Fearless Revolution. Courage is important, but taking fearful action is not a sustainable long-term strategy. If you want to take back control of your life and stop believing the lies that are holding you back, then you're in the right place. Join Sandy Gledhill, your fearless leader coach, as she reveals the secrets to living and leading fearlessly. Now, let's join the Fearless Revolution.
Welcome to the Fearless Revolution. My name is Sandy Gledhill. I'm going to be your host for this podcast, and I am so happy that you dropped in and decided to check out what this crazy podcast is about. It is, as the name indicates, about fearlessness. I am on a mission to open up this really important conversation around fearlessness. The whole world is talking about courage, right? We have TED Talks on it, books being written about it, and gurus from stages doling out advice about how to be courageous and how to fake it till you make it, how to do it afraid. Because really, that's what courage is. We define courage as taking action in the midst of fear. But can I just submit to all of you that taking fearful action is not a sustainable long-term strategy? Courage is important. Without those sort of, few seconds of just pushing ourselves and taking action, even when we're uncertain and our ducks aren't all in a row, without courage, we wouldn't be where we are today. But courage has been the end game for everybody for a really long time. And I'm here to tell you there is something beyond courage, and it is called fearlessness. Fearlessness is not only possible, it is really not that hard to get to when you understand the secrets to fearlessness. So my goal, my mission really in life is to open up this conversation to the world, talk about fearlessness, unveil the secrets of fearlessness, and then give you guys the tips, the tricks, and the hacks that I have figured out in my now almost 20-year odyssey of walking out of the bondage of fear and in to the extreme liberty that is fearlessness. So, who am I? Who am I, and why do I have any authority to speak on this subject? Well, as I said, my name is Sandy Gledhill, and I like to introduce myself like this. Hi, my name is Sandy. I am imperfect, in process, and walking boldly in my purpose. I am imperfect, in process, and yet walking, living boldly in my purpose. Because you guys, those things are not mutually exclusive. Throughout this season, this first season, I'm going to hit the highlights of fearlessness and tell you why it is that I believe I've been given this mission to bring fearlessness to the forefront, to raise it up and make it a topic of conversation that people are discussing and considering as a real option. So I have lived the majority of my life in suffocating fear. I spent close to 4 decades in just a state of constant nervousness, anxiety. I was high strung. I felt afraid all the time, not in the classic sense where, I'm afraid to go outside or I'm afraid to do, to speak up. One of the few fears I didn't ever possess was a fear of public speaking. I actually love to speak publicly, and I've done it most of my life. But fear entered my life really dramatically when I was a young girl, and it set up shop. It took up residence, and fast forward about 3 or 4 decades, I then had a whole myriad of fears that had come into my life. But there was another side to me. I was also born with this sort of big extroverted personality. I'm kind of a born leader. I've never really been risk averse. generally speaking. And so I was trying to manage these two areas of my life. So I'm going to take you guys on this journey with me. I'm going to tell you my story. And really, this first episode is just to say, hey, this is who I am. This is my story. And this is what you can accomplish in your life if you are fearless. I'm going to talk to you about why fearlessness is important and how it can change your life. So I was about 6 years old. My parents got a divorce. I remember so clearly my mom bringing us into her room, and I climbed up onto, the high bed, and I sat there with my little legs dangling off the edge. And I heard my mom say that she and my dad were getting a divorce. And I didn't even know what divorce meant. But she looked at me and said, it's okay if you want to cry. And being the people pleasing second born that I was, I immediately began to cry because I wanted to have the appropriate response to whatever it was that was going on. And let me tell you, while I didn't understand what divorce was, I definitely understood that something bad was happening. I could feel it in the room. And the moment she said, we're getting a divorce, I felt fear come into that room. As an adult looking back, I realize now fear literally entered the room, came up, wrapped its arms around me, and began to squeeze until I felt like I couldn't breathe. And that was even though I didn't have understanding of what was happening. It was the mid 70s, and divorce was not as prevalent as it is now, and it certainly wasn't talked about openly the way it is now. And so there wasn't a lot of, hey, let's check in and have you talk about your feelings. It just wasn't the era that I grew up in. And so this really dramatic moment in my life was like a portal opening that allowed fear to come in. Now, I will tell you, I am well aware that millions of kids have had this bomb drop in their life, right? Millions of kids have heard those same words from their own parents. And yet they didn't get taken out the way that I was. It didn't have the catastrophic effect. I don't really understand why that was. I think part of it was, like I said, the era that I was in and the way that things weren't really talked about. And I think part of it is just my personality. But whatever the case, that was how fear entered my life. And because that fear was unchecked, because I did not deal with that fear properly. And if my parents had known or if I had spoken up, they would gladly have processed it with me. But I instinctively went to a place where, like, I'm okay, it's okay, I'm okay, I'm fine, everything's fine. That was my personality. I just wanted to always be okay and seem okay. And so I pretended. And I learned a few things about fear pretty quickly thereafter. One is fear courts fear. One unchecked fear that's allowed to come into your life and set up shop will bring friends. And that is what happened to me. Another thing I learned is that fear loves to be ambiguous. Fear hates clarity. In fact, if you know anybody who suffers from, as I used to, generalized anxiety disorder, think about that. Why is it generalized? Why is anxiety so nebulous and ambiguous and hard to pin down? Fear doesn't want you to know the truth about it because fear is a big fat liar, and it wants to keep this big cloud of suspicion and fog and chaos and just a lack of clarity around you because fear wants to stay in charge. And one of the episodes that we're going to talk through is really clearly defining your fears, like calling them out and giving them super detailed language. For this reason, when fear can stay ambiguous, shadowy, it feels bigger and more menacing than it really is. When you shine a light, when you drag that obnoxious little thing out into the light, it's like looking at the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain. It's not as bad as you thought it was. So, in addition to fear bringing friends in and loving to be ambiguous, fear is also a liar. It's a liar and a thief. It wants to steal your purpose. Fear wants to be in control of your life. It wants to be in charge of how you make your decisions. It wants to take away your free will. At the end of the day, that is what fear really does, is it takes away your free will. So, one of the things that I learned after I had decades of just suffocating fears and one fear after another piling on, I also was dealing with the second part of my personality that was kind of, extroverted and not afraid to take a risk and kind of out there in the world. And I found like I was trying to spin plates and maintain these fears. Fears need maintenance. They're a lot of work, you guys. When you can kick fear out of your life, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I never knew how easy life could be. Fears take a lot of energy and a lot of thought time and a lot of maintenance. And when you instinctively hide your fears, which most people do understand, like instinctively, fears are weakness, especially if you're in the corporate arena. Um, Fears equal weakness, and weakness is a kiss of death, like show no weakness. So we kind of instinctively hide our fears. And this podcast is not only going to be about my own experience, but also all of these really high performing, amazing leaders that I was able to engage with, consult with, and coach over the years. And I found I was not alone. It was like looking in a mirror with a lot of these people. And I realized this is a bigger problem. It's a widespread, pervasive problem, and nobody's talking about it. So, what made the difference for me? What was that moment that pivoted everything for me? Well, it was a series of moments. So, in my life, I actually had a series of really kind of catastrophic events that happened, things that really could have taken me out, but things that because they didn't take me out, they served as like catalysts for a miracle in my life. They allowed me to realize the secrets to fearlessness. So the first thing was many years ago when my daughter was 6 years old, we found out that she had a brain tumor. It was a benign arachnoid brain cyst, but it was life threatening for her. It was very large. Um, and so that was sort of the first life altering, world shaking thing that ever happened in my life. After that, I went through my own divorce. After swearing up and down, I would never do that and it would never happen to me. I found myself in the middle of a divorce. And as you can probably imagine, with my own history with divorce, there was so much guilt and shame around that it was pretty devastating. And then the third thing that happened is 9 years ago, I was diagnosed myself with an aggressive form of breast cancer that was actually already quite advanced. And it was through these three events over this series of years, really almost 20 years, that I learned how not to give in, how to put one foot in front of the other. But eventually, I learned that it wasn't about survival, it was about taking control of my life. And it also wasn't about strength. When I was diagnosed with cancer, really well meaning people, a lot of them said the same thing to me over and over. And it was really hard for me. And they said this: Sandy, you're going to be okay. You're so strong. You are so strong. You're going to beat this cancer. Well, let me tell you something about cancer, or really, I think any major illness. It is the great equalizer. Nobody feels strong when they're in the midst of cancer treatments. I went through chemotherapy, radiation, hormone therapy, multiple surgeries to remove the disease from my body, and then a whole series, like as in 5 surgeries, to reconstruct my body. So it was a long, just grueling journey for me. And I did not feel strong. But what I realized is fearlessness, learning the secrets of fearlessness, they are not about strength. If you feel weak, great. You are going to feel strong when you begin to learn how to walk out of the bondage of fear and into the liberty of fearlessness. So I alluded to a little earlier that fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. Fear only knows how to lie. Fear never doesn't lie. Lying is the first language of fear. In addition to speaking fears to you, inside of you, about you, using I am statements, fear also loves to embrace and grab hold of external fears. External lies, things that are said about you, either by society or other people in your life. Fear is a liar and a thief. It wants to steal your potential. It wants to steal your purpose. It wants to keep you low. But this is an interesting little fact about fear, and it is the first secret of fearlessness, and that is fear cannot function in your life without your permission and your cooperation. We feel like fears come in uncontrollably, and then they just move right in and make themselves at home, and we have no control. And nothing could be further from the truth. Fear only operates in your life with your permission and with your cooperation. It's picture yourself doing a dance like a tango with fear. If you step off that dance floor, fear's by itself. It cannot afflict you without your agreement, your consent. And that is one of the things that we're going to dig into. It is a secret that is really powerful. Another thing that you need to understand about fear is that you have entered into kind of a contract with fear. Fear says to us, I'm going to keep you safe. Hand over control, hand over your free will, your ability to make good decisions and use your own discernment. Just hand over that free will and that decision making to me, and I will keep you safe. A great example of this was I had a devastating, overwhelming fear of roller coasters for many years. And basically that the contract I entered into with fear, it's unspoken, again, nebulous, it's ambiguous, but it's understood. And that is, hey, Sandy, just don't ever go on roller coasters. Just give up the ability to even think about it. Don't even entertain the possibility of going on a roller coaster. And as long as you do that, as long as you hand that control over to me, your fear of roller coasters, I'm going to keep you safe. You will never go flying out of a roller coaster car, plummeting to your death. I'm going to keep you safe. You will never feel that sweating, that heart racing, that horrible thing that you have felt before as you have sat in roller coasters. Just hand that control over to me and I'm going to keep you safe. Right? Again, it's not as specific as that. It's kind of generalized, it's ambiguous, but I understood that as long as I just agreed to never go again and to not even think about it, not even consider it, then fear was keeping me safe. In fact, you often hear people using this term, I have a healthy fear of fill in the blank. Guys, there's no such thing as a healthy fear. Not one. Not one fear is healthy. Fear told me it was keeping me safe, but every fear lies. It was not keeping me safe. It was keeping me small. And I guarantee you, the fears in your life are not keeping you safe, my friend. They are keeping you from living the big life, the big destiny that you were born to live. Fear is not keeping you safe. It's keeping you small. All right, so I want to quickly make a distinction between fear and instinct. We get these confused. Scientists tell us that we're born with two fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. I suggest that neither of those are fears, those are instincts. How do I know? Because a baby does not lay on its changing table going, gee, I hope mom doesn't leave me here and I roll over and accidentally fall to the ground. That would be horrible. I'm so afraid of that. A baby's not thinking that. Now, if a baby rolls over and starts to feel that there's nothing underneath them, there is an instinct. It's a God-given, wonderful gift of an instinct that causes their body to jerk back to the place where they know there's safety. The same thing happens with loud noises. You know, if You are out walking on a hiking trail and a wild cat, let's say a bobcat, comes, up behind you and roars. You have an instinct, and that instinct is going to do something wonderful. It is going to divert all of the blood flow from those functions in your body that are not crucial for that moment to your extremities, so that if you need to run, you can run. Right. So, like, your gastrointestinal system is all of a sudden going to stop getting the blood flow that it needs so that that blood can pump through your heart and into your extremities so you can run. Guess what? That's God given and that's amazing. But it's also meant to be used very infrequently. We are not supposed to be living in a sustained state of fear, of that instinct place that moves around what is normally happening in our body, makes changes, your heart beating rapidly, your eyes getting super focused, like you have blinders on, so that nothing else matters except that bobcat standing in front of you, so that you can only think about how to get out of there, right? That fight or flight or freeze. The problem is that fear has that same impact on our bodies. And because we're not using it just every so often when we get into really unusual and infrequent situations like I've described, we're living in these sustained places of your body being in that instinctive fear place. So I like to separate those two out. Fear is projecting yourself into the future and expecting a bad outcome. That's what fear is. That's what anxiety is. So, what we want to do is really give good definition to fearlessness. One thing I like to do is talk about what it's not. It's really not about recklessness. It's not about being a daredevil. It's not about skiing down the Black Diamond slope at breakneck speed or jumping out of airplanes. That's not what fearlessness is. Fearlessness is a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's a designation, like a label that you give yourself, that you walk into more and more, and that you live into at different levels as you achieve greater success on your journey in fearlessness. So, why do we need to be fearless? Well, I'll tell you this. In my life, I went from not sleeping, from having all kinds of physical issues, up to and including cancer. I'm not saying fear brought cancer into my life, but I am saying I made a pretty hospitable environment in my own body because I was in a constant state of fear. So, fearlessness is really about liberty. It is, well, we're going to get into what it is over this first season of the Fearless Revolution. But I want you guys to understand it's not about being strong, and it's not about being a daredevil, and it's not about a complete absence of fear in your life. Fear still exists even in my life. It tries to speak its lies to me. But because I'm fearless, because I have gotten a hold of and embraced these keys to unlock the secrets of fearlessness, I don't listen to it. I don't give it the time of day. And you can get there too. And here's what happens when you learn to fear less, you can begin to do more, make more, and be more. Those dreams, those goals that you've wanted to accomplish that have just been out of reach. You just couldn't break through. You couldn't get there. I guarantee you it's because there is a fear standing in the way. As a corporate consultant, a business growth strategist, I, tend to live in that world of business, working with entrepreneurs and influencers and executives. And I'm telling you, you will make what you are worth. There is an exact corresponding financial outcome that comes from understanding and living in fearlessness. I am living proof of that. So you can do more, accomplish more, you can make more, you can unlock that secret of having abundance drawn to you. This is what I found. When I walked in my purpose, I was now chasing money and finance and trying to figure out how to make it big and how to win big, it starts coming to you. Fearlessness attracts abundance. And then the third thing is becoming more, being more, really just living out that destiny, that calling, that purpose that was put in you at birth. That's what fearlessness does for you. It unlocks all the locks. Everything that you've been trying to accomplish, you can accomplish when you understand fearlessness. So, this fearless revolution is happening. I really believe that it is time to begin to live beyond courage. Courage is great, and you're going to need it to just push yourself outside of that comfort zone, especially when you're starting out with fearlessness. But I'll tell you something, you cannot, if you're trying to live in courage forever, it's exhausting. And it's not really that helpful because you're still constantly taking action with fear in the midst. Okay, so I am really excited because I'm going to share a bunch of stories with you. Eventually, probably in season two, maybe in season one, we're going to be bringing in some really fun guests onto our show that have achieved great things. They have learned how to do more, make more, and become more. And they're going to tell us those moments, those pivot points where they moved beyond their fear and what it was that helped them most. In this podcast, you are going to learn um, language hacks. I have coined a term called lethal language. I had an epiphany, just like a total revelation moment where I realized that I was speaking in such a way that I was literally telling my brain to make my body stay in sickness and to age prematurely. I was talking myself into an early grave. And often I was doing it with humor. That's a really good one. That's going to be episode 3. So I want you to jump in on that. But the episode 2, what we're going to do next is all about time. This is hands down my most popular training in all the years that I've been doing this. It's the one that's most requested. And I call it the last time management training you're ever going to need. And here's what you need to know. A lot of people deal with fear around time. They're running out of time. They're too busy. They're overcommitted. They are just feeling behind the 8 ball, like there's never enough hours in the day, or even that the years of their lives have just caught up to them. They're not where they thought they would be at this stage of life. And it causes depression and anxiety and fear. And I'm here to tell you, it is not your inability to manage time that is keeping you there. It is your broken relationship with time itself. And I'm going to give you guys the keys and the secrets to restoring your relationship with time, and it's going to change everything. And you're not even going to have to go out and buy an expensive planner. So how's that for good news? All right. I want to leave you guys with basically just one of the secrets that I think has maybe meant the most to me. And that is, well, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give you another secret because I've already given you a few here. So what I want to do is just welcome you. I want to ask you to come back, check this out, see if fearlessness is the next iteration in your life. Is fearlessness the next step on your journey? Are you ready to move beyond courage? Are you ready to break through, to accomplish your goals, to grab a hold of those dreams, and to do it with action steps? I'm going to give you guys some really easy action steps to walk this out because I want every single person to experience what I've experienced. I want you to be able to live fearlessly. All right. I am Sandy Gledhill. I am imperfect. I am in process. And I am living boldly in my purpose at the same time. I hope to see you guys next time on the Fearless Revolution. Have a blessed day.
The Fearless Revolution has begun, and you are an important part of getting the message of fearlessness out to the world. Follow Sandy on Facebook and Instagram at The Fearless Revolution for more empowering content that will help leaders embrace the fullness of their identities, lean into their destinies, and lead fearlessly. Check out the show notes for all the links. If this podcast has impacted you, we ask that you subscribe or follow, and be sure to share with another fearless leader.